Comrades and friends, and how do I turn this on? Not that I need it probably right now. This is the second session of the Trotsky School, and the theme, of course, as I told you last night of this conference, is Reform or Revolution. So last night we had Is Social Democracy Over? And this morning we're starting off with, is China Imperialist? What does the Chinese economic downturn mean for world capitalism? And is Turkey breaking with Washington? And our speakers today from Turkey via Skype is Sister and Comrade Armagan Tulunay, and she's a member of the Revolutionary Workers' Party in Turkey. And here, of course, on the ground, we have our own Comrade Yazin Kaya, a leader of Socialist Action Canada and PhD candidate in political economy at York University. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our comrade in Turkey, and you have up to 30 minutes, sister.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, on behalf of the Revolutionary Workers' Party, I would like to say thank you to all of you for inviting us to the conference. From Turkey, we send our solidarity and revolutionary greetings to all the comrades there, and we wish you a successful conference. Now, our subject is very comprehensive, and therefore, in a limited time, I thought it's better to emphasize some specific aspects of imperialism related to Turkey and the region. I will try to explain the role and policy of imperialism and its allies in Turkey, and also the position of imperialism, especially in Syria, with its relation with the Turkish foreign policy. Imperialism, according to its interests in the region and in the worldwide policy, is trying to bring various forces to a position of its own ally. And in internal politics of Turkey, we have seen an example of this effort. This effort after the popular revolt beginning with the and during the
Yeah. Internet connection problem. I will call her again.
Sorry, comrade, you were interrupted. Go ahead.
Okay. I said we saw the example of imperialism, the intervention of imperialism to the Turkish policy, the internal politics after the popular revolt beginning with the Gezi Park. The revolt has shaken Erdogan's prestige, and afterwards, between 17th and 25th of December, corruption operations also led to the same result. And this increased the tension between different bourgeois camps in Turkey. On the one side, the secular westernizer bourgeois forces, and on the other side, the Islamist ones. And moreover, it deepens the tension even within the AKP and Islamist camp. And on this basis, during the local elections in the early 2014, with the support of US imperialism, a bourgeois opposition was formed by CHP, the Kemalist Party, by Fethullah Gülen. Maybe you know about his name, the religious figure who has a very good relations with imperialism and Zionism. And we called this pro-American opposition. This was an alternative of imperialism and Turkish bourgeoisie, because Erdogan had moved away from being a factor of stability in Turkey and from being a long-term ally for to defeat Erdogan on the ground of the polls where he has his biggest power. They couldn't achieve their goal, and also another factor is Turkish bourgeoisie preferred a transition in order, an orderly transition when they saw a threat of popular revolt. But in this situation, some parts of Turkish left hoped from this pro-American opposition for the help to weaken Erdogan and AKP. Another important event with which we should draw some lessons in terms of anti-imperialism was the Kobane Serhildan. For the ones who doesn't know the word, Serhildan is a Kurdish word like intifada, like uprising. And in 2014, in October, when the ISIS attacked to Kobane in the Rojava region, increases against the YPG forces of PKK. Against YPG, it's the military forces of PKK in this part of Kurdistan. They organized a big resistance, and at that moment there was also a big confusion about anti-imperialism among Kurdish movement and among some parts of Turkish left. They nearly demanded for US bombing in order to defend Kobane. For us, there was a big mistake. They tried to justify it. They tried to justify their position by preferring one enemy to the other at a specific moment. But for us, this was the reflection of misunderstanding the role of imperialism in the region. And this was the reflection of mixing the enemy and the ally. And another example of intervention of US imperialism to the policies of Turkey showed itself in the June elections. To strengthen the opposition, to weaken the front of Erdogan, for example, some TV channels with American origin or some owned by secular westernizer bourgeois, big bourgeois media groups like CNN Turk, like Fox, opened their doors to the representatives of HDP and provided an important propaganda platform to them before the June elections. It was an effort to weaken Erdogan and to create an alternative other than him. This alternative will be an ally for them in terms of its interests in the region. And with all these propaganda opportunities, with the effect of the Gezi Park revolt, with the effect of the Kobani Serhildan, with the impact of the December 17th to 25th December corruption operations, the strategic defeat of Erdogan was recorded in the elections. It's the elections is not the strategic defeat, but the recognition the strategic defeat of him, and he lost the majority in the parliament. However, it was a big opportunity to call Erdogan and AKP to account for what they have done during their old governments against the workers, against the Kurdish people, against oppressed. The opposition parties, including HDP, missed this big opportunity. And in this field, Erdogan made a an important move and started the war. Here again, there is an important distinction in terms of imperialism. Because it's not only the war of Erdogan, it's also the war of imperialism. Yes, the war was triggered by Erdogan and his team, his political forces, but the fundamentals of this war were not only the colonial interests of Turkish capital, but also the regional interests of US imperialism. People in Turkey, some leftist groups, call this war the war of palace because of the new presidential palace of him, while opposing the war of palace. To ignore this truth, to ignore the other side, was a big mistake for us. And for example, in this context, before the elections in 1st of November, the co-leader of HDP, Selahattin Demirtas, made a statement to Washington Post and displayed United States and European Union as allies and called to NATO. As we said, Erdogan's war is at the same time the war of imperialism, when it increases the ability of operations of United States in the military base of Incirlik in Turkey, by pushing PKK from northern Iraq and Turkish border to the Rojava region, where YPG and United States have a coordinated act. And finally, by acting parallel to Zionism in the region, it's at the same time the war of imperialism and Zionism. For us, because of this, United States gave support to Erdogan's self-defense rhetoric about the war in Kurdish cities, in Turkish Kurdistan, while these cities under the siege. But they support the self-defense rhetoric, but at the same time they condemn the attacks of the secular media groups. This is the point for us. The lives of Kurdish and Turkish youth don't have even a slightest degree of value for US imperialism and Zionism. They're thinking that when the destruction of war increases, the different parts of the war will approach themselves and they would perform their own interests on this bloody surface floor and profit from this war. And today, after the voting in 1st of November, it's not a real election, it's just a voting. We cannot consider an election without propaganda. We cannot consider a normal election under the bombs and siege. This voting shows how quickly US imperialism could change its position and how much it's wrong to hope for help from imperialism. Immediately after the voting, the 1st of November evening, the same night, we wrote a party statement And here we said some capital groups in Turkey, the imperialist centers, and even the internal opposition will come closer to the new government very fast. And only after 3 days, in about 3 days after these sentences, U.S. spokesperson of its operations in Iraq and Syria, Steve Warren, at a press conference at Pentagon said, no longer provide weapons or ammunition to YPG. He said the weapons they have provided previously were for Syrian Arab coalition, and moreover, from now on, he said weapons and ammunition will be for the Syrian opposition, led by the Arabs. And what's most important in his speech is that he emphasized Turkey is a member of NATO. It's a very close ally in the fight against ISIS, and they know Turkey's concerns about this question, and that they promised to take them into consideration. But if we remember what's their position before, the transition will become more clearer. The transition of their position will become more clearer. We don't need to go back very far. Only August this year, same officials, same spokespersons of United States pointed out that there is no risk for the militants of YPG to escape from the organization during the war against ISIS. They considered YPG as the already trained, competent, organized, and most effective force against ISIS in the region. In October, just before the elections, this friendly attitude to ISIS reached its peak, and U.S. had sent to YPG a total of 40 tons of arms. And after the spokesperson of AKP criticized this support, John Kirby from United States said that for us, we do not evaluate YPG, consider YPG as terrorists. They have already proved their success in the fight against ISIS. Change from August and from October to November, early November, indicates that any collaboration for imperialism means collaboration with the devil.
What do we do?
He's calling it again and asking him about it. I think she's back.
Video call?
Yeah. Can you let her know that we lost her for a minute?
She's gonna hear.
Yeah.
Okay, comrade, we lost you for about a minute, so go ahead.
Okay. Then I'm going to conclude. What I said is that we hope this time our Kurdish friends, Kurdish movement, and our our comrades from other leftist organizations who hope for imperialism will draw the lessons of anti-imperialism at this time. We need to write anti-imperialism on our flags, on our banners, with big and bold letters in Turkey and in this region, all over the world. For us, it's important not to be used when we hear some dissenting voices from bourgeoisie, from imperialism. The peace of bourgeoisie and US imperialism here could only be a so-called peace. In essence, it means the preparation of new wars many times. And for Turkey, we defend the collaboration of Gezi Park revolt, October Sarkıl'dan of Kobane, and Wildcat strike of metal workers, which we had in this May, can only bring the peace. This collaboration can only bring the peace. On October 10 in Ankara, where we lost more than 100 people, we were carrying two banners. If you have watched the videos from the explosion moment, you may have seen one of these banners, because the explosion took place very near to our block. I would like to finish my speech with these words. One of them is to ask for peace is not enough. War will not end without defeating AKP. This is for the Turkish internal policy, especially. And the other is peace with the Kurds, war against imperialism. We believe that peace with the Kurds, war against US, we believe that we could not be able to defend the interests of workers, Kurdish people, and oppressed without defending these slogans together at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Now we're